You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
And top of the Monday to you. Thom Hartmann here with you. To my tip of the hat and greetings to my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. Our quote for the day from Thomas Jefferson: when people fear the government, you have tyranny. When the government fears the people, you have liberty. Sounds good to me. Tim Geithner and Larry Summers getting a little nervous here. There's some serious talk about nationalizing the banks. It worked for Sweden. It worked with the S&Ls. Bill Seaman did a great job with that. It seems to be working with Northern Rock and with Royal Bank of Scotland in the UK. Why shouldn't we do it here in the United States? I'll just leave that at that. I think it's a very important point. We'll get into more detail on this as the week goes on. But something, the word nationalization has everybody freaked out, particularly all the conservatives. They're all quite hysterical. And one of the reasons why is because we already have something nationalized, and that's our insurance against disaster. It's called the Social Security Insurance Program. The actual act has gone through several name changes over the years. But originally the word insurance was part of the name back in 1935. I believe it may still be. And the Social Security, fully a third of Social Security literally is insurance for disaster. People like my dear friend Michael Hutchison in Santa Fe, who was out running about 15 years ago, and in the snow, in the ice, tripped over a bridge, ended up in a river with a broken neck, and is living on Social Security, paralyzed from the neck down. And it's keeping him alive. It's keeping a lot of people alive. About a third of total Social Security payments are literally going to widows, orphans, and disabled people. A fine thing. And it's, of course, insurance against poverty in old age. So the thing that concerns me is that folks like Jerome Corsi are out there, and he actually solicited us to have him come on the program. Sorry, Jerome, enough already. But, this is the guy who brought us Swiftboat Veterans for Truth. Excuse me. And his Obama Nation book smears, I wrote it on the internet, it must be true, about Obama. And here's the deal. The millionaires and billionaires who subsidize those kinds of books and who subsidize people like Corsi really don't want there to be a Social Security program. In particular, right now, they're starting to get very hysterical about it. And the reason why is because the taxes that pay for Social Security, the so-called payroll tax, are only paid by working people. They're only paid by people who make up to $100,000 a year. You make more than $100,000 a year, more or less, and you pay no Social Security taxes whatsoever on all your income past that first $100,000. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. Niet. And the millionaires and billionaires in America would very much like it to keep it that way. So they've got people like Corsi out there, their front men, the people, they're paid shills out there, and they're scaring the hell out of Americans. I get this email from Jeff Brown, and I'm sure Jeff is a well-intentioned guy. He says, Thom, the reason why I email you is, honestly, I hope you see the error of your ways. I guess I feel like an evangelist sounding the alarm to you with Medicare and Social Security. We already have $60 trillion in debt obligations. This is a bigger Ponzi scheme than Madoff. Social Security is a Ponzi with trillions of dollars. Please see that Medicare and Social Security put us in a hole already in terms of debt obligations. We need to cut the entitlements, but people of your ilk will never do such a thing because it's uncompassionate. You applaud bigger FDR-type programs. And then he has a link to Corsi's piece over at worldnetdaily.com. He says, I seriously hope, Thom, that you realize we need to cut all these things from our budget, these little FDR programs that started, if you're going to have a strong dollar. Otherwise, we'll become like Argentina or the UK. Actually, the problem that Argentina and the UK have is that they started to cut their social safety nets. The UK started going down the tubes when Margaret Thatcher came in and started cutting out the social safety net programs. That is what has put them into a crisis. The problem that Chile, I'm assuming he's thinking of Chile, not Argentina. Argentina's had some serious problems, too. Their biggest problem had to do with growing with the World Bank, with debt from the World Bank. Chile, the World Bank, the same thing. The World Bank came in and said, you have to privatize your Social Security program, which, by the way, is what Corsi's advocating. What did it do? It wiped out people's Social Security. Wiped it out. Why? Because the bankers came in and they skimmed their piece off the top. It's just like private health insurance. Anyhow, Jeff goes on to say, can't you just do the math and drop your fantasy that we can even afford universal health care? Then why do you push another debt onto an already bankrupt United States? So we go to Corsi's piece. And he says, the American public is largely unaware that the true deficit of the federal government already is measured in trillions of dollars. In fact, it's $65.5 trillion in total obligations and exceeds the gross domestic product of the world. All right. If your debt obligations are calculated as all the money that you're ever going to have to pay out in the future, and you compare that with all the money that you happen to have right now, Corsi's right. But that's sort of like saying that, the average, the median income in the United States is around $50,000, right? I think it's $46,000 and change, $45,000 and change. Let's say it's around $50,000 a year. And the average person works about 40 years. So that's $2 million. So the average working person in America earns through the course of their lifetime about $2 million. They also spend about $2 million because the average working person spends everything they earn. So that's like saying somebody who just came into the workplace is $2 million in debt because over the course of the 40 years that they work, they're going to spend $2 million. And they only have $50,000 in income. So they're broke. They should be freaking out. They should be running around with their hair on fire. Do you get how stupid that logic is? It's like saying, it costs about $250,000 in America right now to raise a kid. On average, when you figure child care costs, clothing, food, transportation, this is not even including putting them through college. Just the cost of taking a kid from 0 to 18. It's about $250,000. So that's like saying every time a child is born, that family all of a sudden has $250,000 in debt. And they should freak out and run around screaming, pulling their hair out, and put their child up for adoption. Get rid of the kid. Because after all, they don't have that $250,000. Well, the fact of the matter is, over the course of the 18 years of that child's, until they go off, until they're legally an adult, people are going to earn that money. That income's going to come in. So that's $65 trillion that Corsi's talking about. Yeah, of course, there's an obligation out there. We've said to people, we're going to cover you when you're retired. We've also said we're going to charge taxes to pay for it. And in fact, Social Security will not face any sort of crisis whatsoever for at least 20 years. Everything is fine, thank you very much. And when it does, it will be easily solved by simply saying that anybody earning over $100,000 should pay the exact same, flat tax, the exact same level of taxation on Social Security as people making under $100,000. This isn't rocket science. But see, Corsi is shilling and fronting for the millionaires and billionaires who are paying his salaries, the people who go out and buy 40, 50,000 copies of his Swiftboat book as soon as it hits, so that it hits the New York Times list, so that all of a sudden he can get publicity as a New York Times best-selling author. The same shell game, the same scam that they do with all the conservative books. It's the only reason that Ann Coulter, it's the only reason that Jerome Corsi, it's the only reason any of these guys have their books on the New York Times bestseller list. You get these so-called foundations, these right-wing so-called think tanks. They go out and buy millions and millions, or not millions, they go out and buy hundreds of thousands of these books, to even tens of thousands is typically, if they do them right, if they do it strategically, is enough to get them on the New York Times bestseller list. Then they're stuck with the books that they've paid for. So what they do is they go to websites like WorldNet Daily and others, and they give them away for free if you sign up. Or they give them away with magazine subscriptions. I mean, they figure out ways to recycle them, basically. But all it is basically it's billionaire and millionaire right-wingers buying the allegiance of the people who are talking to the average American to scare the hell out of them. There's no reason to be scared. This is a problem that is relatively easily solved. Now, as to health insurance, national health care, you say, Jeff says, oh, we can't afford national health care. We're already paying for it, Jeff. We're already paying for it. The problem is if somebody gets sick and goes into an emergency room, you're paying $600 for something that should have cost $35. And by the way, if they have a chronic condition, if they need insulin, If they need heart medication, they show up at the emergency room, they're not going to get it. ERs are not designed for maintenance, for that kind of thing. So if they've got no health insurance, they really are out in the cold. But the problem isn't that. The problem, I mean, that is a problem. The problem is that hundreds of billions of dollars a year are skimmed off the top, arguably trillions, from our healthcare system by health insurance companies that frankly have no right to exist. That's the problem. Get them out of the way. It's easily solved.